The Iowa State Cyclones could look very different next year due to the what's it called? Oh, that's right. The transfer portal. Today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in, Cyclone fans, to the Locked On Cyclones podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And shout out to you guys that listen every day. You guys make this world go round. You guys are what I do this for. I appreciate every single one of you guys. And if you are listening or if you're watching here on YouTube, be sure to subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Lots to break down in today's episode. We're going transfer portal. One of the biggest changes to NCAA football in recent years is popping off. As of yesterday, the transfer portal opened. This is airing on Tuesday. So we're going to talk about what moves has Iowa State made, who's leaving the program, who are the Cyclones targeting for next year. And then in the second segment, I will break down what do we need to do? What positions does Iowa State need to target to make this team better, to move that needle, to make it the jump to the next level, obviously, after a disappointment in the Big 12 championship this year. And in the third segment, this one will be fun. Why does Iowa State need to make moves? I thought we were supposed to be this homegrown program, bringing in players from the state of Iowa, not the team. We will not be talking about the Hawkeyes today, no. But from the state of Iowa, we bring them in. We're local. We bring them up. They play within the program, and they're proud to be here. Why should Iowa State use the portal? We're going to break that down. Don't worry. Don't go anywhere either. That's going to be a fun one. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And to start off this episode, boy, things are heating up already. Things are getting interesting right off the bat. Obviously, that portal opened up yesterday, December 9th, Monday. I didn't do anything on it yesterday because, well, when you put a pan on the grill, when you put a skillet in the smoker or in the grill, does it immediately get up to temperature? No, it takes a little bit of time. The heat molecules have to move around and get the pan up to temperature. So on Monday, things really hadn't heated up. We're obviously shooting this Monday night, so things will change between now and when this episode goes live, and then for the rest of Tuesday. But on Monday morning, really, there wasn't too much to talk about. I didn't want to do a ton of speculation, and so I'd rather talk, about our basketball program. And obviously, you guys listened yesterday. If you didn't, go back. It's a great episode. All of them are here at Locked On Cyclones, and honestly, across the Locked On Podcast Network. Shout out to all the guys working. A lot of great guys here. Anyways, let's not get too sidetracked. There are things popping off now, though, so we have to address those. First, there are a couple guys leaving from the Cyclones. Disappointing, I know, but you can only have so many guys on the team, and I wish these guys all the best in their future endeavors. Let's get started with J.J. Kohl, quarterback, 4-star recruit out of Iowa, obviously. 2 snaps this year, did not get a lot of playing time, and obviously we all saw Connor Moberly sub in for Rocco after that nasty hit in the Big 12 championship game. I'm sure that Kohl did not necessarily love that, and that probably played into his decision. Either way, he will be on his way out after turning some heads with that signing. Next up, we got a couple guys here. Trent Jones, the second, 6 tackles for the D-end, decides he's going to continue his career elsewhere. Trayvon Howard, DB for the Cyclones, previously had 4 tackles, 2 of them being solo. And then 2 specialist guys here. Keegan Shackford, a kickoff specialist for the Cyclones, sat behind Jace Gilbert, was the number 1 guy there. And then Drake Knobloch, long snapper for us. He played behind Drew Clausen, and he only played in weeks 1 and 2. Long snapper position has been interesting over the last few years for the Cyclones, but it seems like we get it figured out. We don't have a whole lot of issues with that long snapper position. So we wish all of these guys the best moving forward. And then we've also got recently offensive lineman AJ Burton, the 2024 recruiting class signee, spent a year with us, and the 6'5", 290-pound player has 4 years of eligibility remaining. He's going to take that elsewhere. So that, as of right now, is who is leaving the Iowa State Cyclones. Okay. Now, all of these guys that I'm about to mention, the ones that we're targeting, are per Cyclone Fanatic. So Just keep that in mind. That's where I'm pulling this data from. We are sending out 4 offers at this current moment, 2 to wide receivers, 1 to a D tackle, and 1 to a defensive back. We'll talk more about where I think we need to be allocating our resources, spending our time in the second segment. Don't go anywhere for that. But the fact of the matter is, let's jump into who the offers are currently going out to. First off, wide receiver Xavier Townsend from UCF probably rings a bell. 5'10", 170 pounds, has 2 years of eligibility remaining. Was an Iowa State commit, friends with Rocco Becht. The first thing that comes to my mind when I see this is obviously Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. If it can happen on the biggest stage where guys will move from, this is the biggest business potentially in the entire world, the NFL. If he can leave one team to join his former quarterback with another team, I don't see why that can't happen at the college level. And you might say, well, the Jets stink this year. 14th straight season without a postseason appearance. It's not very good, is it? Do we really want that? Well, that is a valid take, and this luckily is not a Jets podcast because I would certainly be in a different mind state. But we have to also acknowledge the fact of how comfortable is Aaron Rodgers with Devontae Adams. I feel like personally, though I don't watch a lot of Jets games, he seems to be very, very comfortable. There's a gel there. There is a level of trust, and that comes from years and years of playing together. Now, friends and playing together in the NFL are very different things. Don't get me wrong, but I don't hate it. I really don't hate if we can bring in one of Rocco's friends, even if it's just for the camaraderie among, within the team. I don't hate that at all. So that's one that I do like us sending out. Next up, we have wide receiver Chase Sowell from East Carolina, 6'4", 195. Big dude, can get up over the top. Started his career at Colorado with Deion Sanders, and then that whole him clearing house happened. So don't really need to touch on that, but he ended up at East Carolina and realistically was the second leading receiver there. Realistically, I mean like literally statistically, 34 catches, 678 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So obviously productive at East Carolina. I don't hate that offer either. I like targeting wide receivers, and that's a little bit of a hint to you for that second segment. But 6'4", that's a big dude. D tackle Langdon Kitchen from Northwest Missouri State, 6'7", 270 pounds. I'm always going to be in the boat. If you can send an offer to anyone over 6'5", probably not a bad offer. I don't know if you have ever seen a 6'5" person or taller in person. A 6'7" is obviously right in that range of, I'm 6 foot, like maybe 1. And if I see a 6'7" dude, I am automatically, my head is just straight up. I'm just like, oh, hey there. I hope I didn't step, in your area. I hope I didn't mean to disturb you, because they are huge humans. And at 270 pounds as well, a D tackle, going to be able to make a lot of noise. I like that. And then our defensive back target, Trey Bell from Lindenwood, 6'3", 191. Take a look at his stats here. He's got 24 tackles, an interception, and 6 pass breakups in the last year. I really like that because he's making plays on the ball when it does go his way. 7 of those times it went his way, he made a difference on that play, breaking it up or an interception, even better. So realistically, I like that class quite a bit. Those offers, they look solid. I think, as I said yesterday, if this is my NCAA fantasy or whatever, NCAA dynasty draft, those would be guys I'd be targeting. So shout out to the administration over there, Matt Campbell and the other coaching staff, for targeting great dudes. But I will say I've got a few really, really good ones here in this second segment. So stick around. We're going to break down right after this who should the Iowa State Cyclones be targeting from a position standpoint. And I've got a few players picked out as well right after this. Get ready to tackle the NFL action and with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The Cyclones season was, things did not look great against Arizona State, but that doesn't mean it's over. We'll be playing Miami in the Pop-Tart Bowl. And I took a look at that line right away because obviously Miami turned heads, but so did the Cyclones. Cyclones coming in at 1.5-point dogs. By now, if the Cyclones are dogs, I'm taking them with the points. I like that 1.5-point line. And obviously, if you do too, you should take it over at FanDuel. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page you place your live bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The transfer portal is live. Ladies and gentlemen, you're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the Cyclones, I'm hoping, will make some moves, okay? We have targets we have to hit, and let's take a look at them right away, right off the bat. I personally have, I'm just going to take three here, needs at wide receiver, defensive line, and offensive line. Those were the biggest issues I saw with this team all year, and offensive line being that third kind of tertiary pick. But wide receiver is a big one not because we were bad this year. We had the best receiving duo in the league in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll. No, because both of those guys are going to the league because they are so good. And we're going to have a big hole there to fill. So we need to get guys in and we need to fill that hole first and foremost so that offense can keep rolling. Now, the defense proved to be a pretty big issue this season. So that's why I picked the defensive line. Our pass rush was not very good. Third and fourth down stoppages rates, not very good. Run defense, defensive line pretty big in that. So that's my number two. And then offensive line, I thought our pass protection wasn't terrible. Take out a few plays here and there. But our run attack could have been a lot better. And that obviously stems from the offensive line. We've got guys in the backfield, Carson Hansen making his name this year. So I want to see a little bit of an upgrade at the offensive line position. And that being said, I picked out, this is 6 guys here that I kind of just hearing at the portal at this current moment like. Now, granted, you got to take this with a grain of salt. I haven't looked at a single second of film. And also, this is brand new, right? These literally all came out today. So if, someone's sitting on it, they're not sure if they're going to leave yet. Maybe they're waiting for a bowl game, a playoff team. They have a different portal window. So those guys could open up. But the way it is right now, I personally, at the wide receiver position, have 2 targets for the Cyclones. Jonte Cook, the second from Texas, got 3 years of eligibility remaining. He had 8 receptions for 137 yards this year and 2 touchdowns. Now, why is he on my list? Couple different reasons. First off, 3 years of eligibility remaining. If you had 3 years of eligibility remaining, you were automatically on my list. And then I would kind of whittle it down from there. But being able to join the team for a while was kind of a big one for me. Then when you look at, obviously, the Texas roster is loaded. So this guy just he's got weapons in front of him. He's got guys he's got to fight for target share with. I don't necessarily hold his numbers against him. But if you look at his numbers last year, he had 8 receptions for 136 yards. So pretty consistent there. I like that quite a bit. Next up, Mario Craver, I think is how you say it. Wide receiver for Mississippi State, 3 years remaining. He had 8. He played 8 games, had 17 receptions, 368 yards, and 3 touchdowns. The number one thing that stood out to me here, 17 receptions and 3 touchdowns. That's a pretty good ratio. I mean, it is. Xavier Guillory against Iowa State had 2 receptions for 2 touchdowns. That's perfect. That is the best ratio you can have. But 17 receptions for 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's like almost 1 in every, 5 times he's getting the ball? Somewhere around that ballpark. Let's not get crazy with the maths here. I'm not a math major. But either way, still very much head turner. And 368 yards is also quite good. Next up, I've got 2 defensive linemen here. Nikhil Bertrand came from Bama. He's got 3 years remaining left of eligibility. And yes, he spent a year with Texas A&M, then went to Bama. And so I don't like these guys that just jump, because then you come to our squad for a year. Maybe you don't get the playing time that you hoped for, and you're immediately out the door. I don't love that, especially from the culture standpoint that the Cyclones have built. And we'll talk about, should the Cyclones be going heavy into the transfer portal, because we are this homegrown, built from within type of program in the third segment. So don't go anywhere for my take on that. But honestly, if he's good enough for Bama, he's good enough for me. He's a big dude and he can make plays. So I just put him on my list. And then I'm going to butcher this name, so please pardon this. Kiana Davis, 3 years of eligibility, defensive lineman from Nebraska. I liked what Nebraska did this year, and their record might not have reflected it, but I thought they were a really solid program. And he had 9 tackles, 5 of which were solo. So the ability to kind of make noise on that interior line is going to be huge. We need that next year. Absolutely. We need a pass rush, but 5 tackles making stops in the run game is going to be big. That was a point of struggle this year, as we saw clear as day this last weekend. And then a little bonus one for you here. I've got Joshua Bates, 6'3", 6'3", 309 pounds from Oklahoma. I think this guy could be a pretty big deal, but we'll see kind of what happens. Offensive lineman. Is offensive line the biggest point of concern for the Cyclones? I would say no. But I don't hate making some moves to try to bolster that line and get a little bit of depth, because we saw just this last year how big of an impact injuries can have. And that's one of the great things about the transfer portal, is just how deep you can create your team to be. When you look at this at a macro scale, should the Cyclones attack areas in which they're deep or areas in which they're weak? The way I see it, I would rather attack some weak areas, because that means that our backups currently on the roster are not quite as strong as obviously the guys that were out there on the field, and those areas may have been areas of weakness for us. So that's my number one priority. But then number two, if you can get depth, it doesn't hurt to sign the guy, you know what I mean? Or at least to offer it to him. So making some noise in the transfer portal, I think, will be big for the Cyclones, and targeting the right players. From what I've seen, we talked about in the first segment, we're making the right targets right away, and it's only going to heat up over the next few days here. And then, as I said, with those playoff teams, those players joining the portal too, I like where we're at, and I have a lot of confidence in the front office. But the question now becomes, should they be big in the transfer portal? We see teams all across the nation take different approaches to this new aspect to college football. And I'll break that all down, because it is a homegrown, kind of program here at Iowa State, in the third segment, right after this message. Nothing delivers joy and comfort quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite. And right now, you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience. And the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. That's a 50% off at omahasteaks.com, OMAHA steaks.com, and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. The question now about the transfer portal is why? Why should Iowa State go heavy into the transfer portal to elevate their team? I thought this was a group of guys who were brought in from the state or very near surrounding states, and they spend 4 years here, and they get a lot better within the program, and then they elevate themselves to the top of the top out on the field when they get their chance to play. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I think the answer is simple. It's not the same as it used to be. Okay, we're looking at a totally different landscape of college football than we have ever seen before in multiple different facets of the word, of the concept even. There is a 12-team college football playoff now, the transfer portal, NIL, 3 things just right off the top of the dome. Then you don't even want to get into rule changes, which is kind of unrelated to this, but still changes to the sport. It's a different game now, okay? Some people are going to point towards Clemson, who is the ACC champion and is in the college football playoff, known sort of for not making a lot of transfer portal moves. That can happen. I'm not saying you need to be active in the transfer portal to be successful. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I think we need to be to actually get better. You don't have to, but I think you need to. If that makes sense. It probably doesn't. Either way, that being said, one case in point that I want to point to directly is J.J. Kohl, okay? Now, J.J. Kohl, 4-star recruit out of the state of Iowa, is now transferring from the Cyclones, entering the transfer portal. I'm highlighting him because some people are going to tell me that, well, the guys from it's different here. It's not the same as it is out in the SEC or maybe even in the Big Ten, where the guys want the playing time. They're willing to stick around for multiple years and end up, maybe fourth year, maybe they take a redshirt somewhere in there, their fifth year, they end up on the field and they're very ready to play ball. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just telling you right now, J.J. Kohl is the perfect example that things aren't the same way they used to be. Things are, he could have stuck around. He's a 4-star recruit. He's capable of playing football. If he wanted to play for the Cyclones, he's from the area. Like, there is an element of home to it. It's not like there's nothing keeping him here. It's not like he's from California and he was like okay in California and he's like way down on the depth chart. Granted, Moberly stepped in the Big 12 championship game, so I don't know how that all plays a role, but this is a prime example of guys recruited from the state aren't guaranteed to stay here. So if we don't capitalize on bringing in new guys, I think we're wasting potential there. I think there is something to be said about trying to make the moves essentially before people leave. And you don't want to replace people per se. You don't want to penalize them for staying here, because then you build a culture that is around – it's just a quick overturn. And I can't tell you which one is more successful. I can't tell you if it's more of a Duke or Kentucky basketball type deal where you just bring in guys, they're one and dones, you bring in the best of the best, and you're pretty good year to year in that, if not in that top 10 conversation, as opposed to you have that homegrown feel where guys will stick around 3 years right behind that number one guy. Maybe they're 2 or 3 on the depth chart, and they're willing to stay because of the culture that's built, and they're getting better every day, and they get the chance to play for the Cyclones. I'm not saying that that's not the case. It's just that there are certainly situations in which things are different. So I also want to point this out. The coaching for Iowa State is kind of what I'm pointing towards here. Our team has some of the best coaches in the nation. Do they make mistakes during games? Yes. Nobody is supposed to be perfect. Well, nobody can really be perfect throughout these games. You're going to make a mistake here or there. Should you have called timeout? Should you have ran this play? Should you have gone with this scheme? Was that the best preparation method? It gets really, really deep. So is the coaching staff the best in the nation, of like the best of all time even? No, probably not, as much as I wish they were. But they're a very, very, very sound crew, not only on the field, but in my opinion, in the locker room, the way they built the team, the culture. We hear all the time this year about how it's a group, it's a team effort now. They win together, they lose together. They've built this feeling of camaraderie, this unified sense of team, which is hard to do. It really is. And we have developed players. So this team is, obviously heralded or kind of just headwinded, I guess is probably the word. It's not the right word, but by Matt Campbell and crew. So they are top of the top, in my opinion, not, the top, but they're very, very good. So to assume that we can't bring in guys and develop them or get them to buy into the program it would be silly. But there are going to be guys that are hop around, and the coaching staff can't really do much about that. You can only coach so much. So the question then is, do we bring in guys from smaller colleges or bigger colleges? Where do we go if we are to get better through the portal? There's obviously cases of guys from smaller schools like Higgins coming from an Eastern Kentucky that they worked out, I'm looking at the guys we brought in the past. We haven't been very active, but Higgins from Eastern Kentucky, Eli Green from North Dakota State, 2 guys that were big on this year's team. Obviously, Eli Green not so much on that same level as Higgins, but Jalen Travis from Princeton, offensive lineman last year. Kennard Snyder did see a decrease from his time at ULM, but still made a difference. Ryan Robinson and Matthew Best, less so. But these guys are, most of these are from smaller schools as I'm looking at this. We're apparently targeting the smaller school, and some of them are working out, but some are not. My opinion is we need to target the bigger school players, because from a bigger school, you come from a bigger school, you're going to be used to the way they run the program, what's expected of you, how much time, how much effort, how are things run from the inside out. It's going to be a lot different, and it's nothing to say anything against the small schools, because obviously studs can come out of the small schools. They really can. But it's just a different level of excellence expected, I think, at these programs like a Texas or an Alabama or an Oklahoma, to where they jump into the Cyclones program and it's not a surprise. It's not we have to be here, 6 days a week. I'm not saying I don't know how the smaller programs are run. I'm just saying there's less chance of a shock, a culture shock that is from a bigger school. Then that is where you risk guys, a case in point, Nikhil Bertrand from Bama the year prior was spending time with Texas A&M. So these bigger school guys, if the program fit isn't quite right, or you go from big program to big program, you're that caliber player. Excuse me, man, my mouth's getting dry. And they don't get the playing time they want, they're willing to just transfer out right away. So I don't know which, is necessarily better. And there's a reason that I'm not running the program for the Cyclones, just because I don't know. I don't know those things. And they do. So I'll put my trust in the Cyclones. Like I said, one of the best coaching staffs and football administrations, in my opinion. But I don't think going for the smaller schools is wrong. I just don't think it's the right play. You can target the smaller school guys all you want, but I think the bigger school guys are where, they have seen it. They've practiced against the top of the top in their time with college athletics, and they, I think, have a higher ceiling, but that's also a ridiculous take. So you can flame me for that because obviously Higgins came from a smaller school, and that's not to say Higgins is the only one. We see guys all across the nation who come from smaller schools and they end up making noise at a bigger school just because it was their first year out of high school. They didn't quite get recruited in the same way somebody from a huge high school would, but they were good enough to make a small school, and they made a lot of noise there. So my opinion, we need to be active in the transfer portal to turn this team into the next level of Cyclones football. We need to probably target more Power 4 school type players, guys that have seen the top of the top, have practiced at that level, have that level of excellence expectation. And that is more than just when are you coming in? That's how do you approach practice? That is what is the locker room atmosphere like? And then the last thing is my expectation for this is that the coaches are going to remain great. They obviously make great decisions out on the field, but how are they going to go about the culture within the locker room? And they've done a great job turning it around and turning it into the program that it is today. And I expect nothing less from the transfers that they'll bring in. I hope we see a great big transfer portal class, but I also hope we see bringing in more guys from the state of Iowa, because that mindset of we're homegrown is really cool, and I really do like that. That being said, thank you for making this your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Cyclones, your team every single day. Until next time, sayonara, Cyclones.